Welcome back, everybody. The US president was quick to call out the New York attacker. On Twitter, he described him as a very sick and deranged person.
He also tweeted, "I just ordered Homeland Security to step up our already extreme vetting program. Being politically correct is fine, but not for this." That tweet, of course, came just hours after a man drove a truck into a crowded bike lane in Manhattan, killing at least 8 people.
Okay, for more now on the politics of all of this, political commentator Mo Kelly is with us. Also, California Republican National Committeeman Sean Steele and political analyst Peter Mathews. Thank you all for being.
Everybody.
Welcome. Okay, Mo, is the president right? Will an increase in extreme vetting of immigrants help prevent another attack like this one, given that the guy carried this out had actually been in the country for 7 years?
We don't have very intellectually honest conversations. If you want to have a travel ban preventing terrorists from potentially coming in the country, well, we should also include France. We should also include Spain. We should also include the United Kingdom. That's where these terrorist attacks are happening. And in this case, if this person seems to be from Uzbekistan, these aren't even countries or locations which are on this supposed watch list or travel ban list. We can't stop people from doing evil. Just because we may want to have more extreme vetting, it doesn't stop the evil in people's hearts.
Sean, I want you to consider this tweet put out by Susan Hennessy. She was an attorney in the Office of General Counsel of the National Security Agency. She commented this way in response to President Trump's position about extreme vetting being stepped up. "Nearly 600 Americans were shot earlier this month, and Trump advocated that we do absolutely nothing in response." In other words, 600 people died in Las Vegas. The president was silent in terms of what steps should be taken. And then here we are, instantaneously, the president saying, let's step up extreme vetting.
This is such utter nonsense on so many levels. And Susan Hennessy, she's really not very important in this conversation. We have a worldwide struggle that's going to be around while our children and our grandchildren are going to be fighting it. And that's a certain jihadist sect of the Islamic religion, which is maybe 10%, but we're still talking about millions and millions of very angry people. And we're talking about extreme vetting. It was Obama's diversity program. That's literally what it was called, that brought in this particular terrorist in New York City, killing 8 Americans. 8 families that'll never be the same, plus the carnage that was left. And this is happening again and again and again. And it's going to continue to happen worldwide. And this is the focus we need to talk about. This woman talking about 600 murders. We're talking about probably about Chicago, Obama's hometown, where they have the strictest gun controls in the country and has the highest murder rate. So that's just cognitive dissonance. Actually, it doesn't make any sense.
Just to fact check you, I don't think Chicago has the toughest gun laws in the country, for a start.
Illinois certainly does, among the worst.
Okay, well, let's just bring Peter in this, because Peter, there's obviously the politics here of how you go about dealing with terrorism. How do you make your country safe? But at the same time, if you single out one group in particular, which is what Sean is talking about, which is what the president also seems to be talking about, often that can exacerbate what is already a bad situation.
Well, yes, of course, because if any group figures that they're singled out, they're going to react in a negative way. And I think it's a much broader-based question. I mean, it has to do with our connections and our foreign policies, as well as what can we do about security right here in the country. And for that, we should not single out one group. We should, maybe more strict vetting would help a little bit. But as Mo mentioned, this guy was from Uzbekistan, which is not even on the watch list. It's not even on the prevention of immigrant list. So it's really, you can't get quick answers just like that because of this extreme, horrible condition of what happened. And as you mentioned, 600 people were killed in Las Vegas, and not much was mentioned about how to stop that, how to reduce the chance of that happening through this kind of semi-automatic and automatic weapons. So that's something to look at in a more balanced way.
Just to clarify that point, 600 people have been shot since Vegas.
Yes, absolutely.
Shot and wounded, I think. There's still a lot who have been killed too, I think.
Well, yes, you're saying 600 people were shot earlier this month, is what it was her point.
But the point is that there's a lot of gun violence.
Yeah, I mean, that's a broader point, that there are a lot of gun violence, and in the context of Vegas, which was one example, the president did not come out in the face of that mass casualty.
I thought he said quite a bit. He actually showed up.
He did not advocate.
I don't know what you're talking about. The president made a very firm statement about that. He showed up. He was there. He was visible.
What was his proposition for how to stop it from happening again?
I don't know if we have a prescription about how to stop all things all the time, but when you have a foreigner that comes to this country who hates America,
what difference does it make?
Oh, it makes a huge difference if he's a jihadist.
So in other words,
it makes a huge difference if he's a male between the ages of 18 and 35, which is 90% of the terrorists in this country.
And kills 55,
it's not Swedish women that are grandmothers. That's not the ones that have to be strip searched at airports. It's a pretty obvious situation. You're stuck in the politically correct mode, which is going to be a suicidal
number.
mission.
55 is more than 8, and I'm not trying to trivialize that 8 people died, but if we're trying to protect the most...
all the deaths that have been taking place year after year, the hundreds of thousands of African Christians that have been murdered over the last 10 years in Africa alone.
Okay.
Nobody's talking about it. It's a worldwide phenomenon.
Agreed, but you also know that more Muslims have been killed by these individuals.
The greatest threat, jihadists do more damage to Muslims, Christians, and Jews. Let's keep that in mind. And the greatest number of victims are Muslims. We need to see 3 things in this country: Muslims stepping up, the moderate Muslims, working closely with the government, and then de Blasio took the police out of the mosques. We need to have good agents, good people inside the mosque
in the United States in the past 5 years.
Compared to gun
how
violence.
many?
Do you know how many Americans have died since 9/11 by homegrown radicals?
Several hundreds.
45. Add the 8 on today, you're up to 50 and that's a fact. But
and by the way, is that insignificant?
It's not insignificant.
Not at all.
Does that make you feel better when you want to go to New York City? Are you feeling good about going out tonight?
Just saying, compared to the 10,000 people who were murdered by guns in this country, it's a much lower number. But Peter, it's one
well, let's talk about gun violence sometime. That's a great discussion, because you're going to lose on that one too.
Okay, Peter, I want to bring you in because we did talk about the president's initial response to these 2 events: the mass shooting event in Vegas, the worst massacre in modern American history, and then this event in New York. The president's initial response on Twitter was this: in New York City, looks like another attack by a very sick and deranged person. Law enforcement is following this closely. Not in the USA. That last part seems to be kind of a call for tougher immigration laws, or he went on to say extreme, more extreme vetting, if you like. Compare that to his initial response to the mass shooting in Vegas earlier this month. My warmest condolences and sympathies to the victims and families of the terrible Las Vegas shooting. God bless you. To be fair, the president eventually did send out his condolences to the
30 minutes after,
maybe an hour or so, in fact, to those who lost their lives in New York. Explain the difference here, if you can, in the tone and the substance from the president's message.
Well, the difference is that one person was a foreigner who came to this country, and the other one was native-born, a white American guy. And there's a difference in the way Mr. Trump seems to treat people based on ethnicity, based on background, and he's got to stop that. He's got to understand there's America for everyone. Even when he talks about gun control, he's got to be more strict about what should be done. I mean, you can't be having semi-automatic weapons be made into automatic weapons with the bump stocks, which is something that has to be regulated much more, and no one's talking about that. At least the leadership on the right wing of the spectrum is not talking about it. It's time to get real about this and to not just blame one group or the other, but talk about overall policy. Let me say something else. When we invaded Iraq, that caused a lot more violence against the United States and its troops around the world, and including terrorist acts. That act of going into Iraq with no weapons of mass destruction, no provocation against a country which never attacked us, was a total fiasco, and that should be looked at, and we should stop doing things like that without looking in long-range terms. And that will also help the American situation in the world and keep our security better.
Oddly enough, that's exactly what Donald Trump campaigned on. He opposed the war in Iraq. It turns out to have been one of the greatest geopolitical misgivings of the United States. Bush hung his presidency on it. It was a disaster. It was a really poor policy. We should have let Saddam Hussein continue to terrorize his own people and bother Iran, and Iran could have terrorized their people. We shouldn't have gone in. You're right.
But I want to bring back to what's happening in New York. I want to bring Mo into this because, just to sort of clarify Sean's point, what I think Sean is trying to get at is that there needs to be a sensibility about how we go about, immigration in this country, how you look at people in this country, and there is a profile of people who, in Sean's view, and I think has been proved by the numbers and all the rest of it, where who are more prone to violence than others, and that should be taken into account.
I don't disagree with that, but there's also an issue of proportionality.
Yeah.
If someone should kill 55 people, then let's look at that profile as well. We can't talk about someone like Dylan Roof, who killed 9 people, and say that that is of lesser importance than this person who killed 8 people today. If it's about saving Americans, and all these people are Americans, I would hope that you would agree with me that all of it's important.
I do.
And if we switch the attackers, and this attacker today was actually the perpetrator in Las Vegas, I have a feeling, a sneaking suspicion, that your commentary would be slightly different today, and it shouldn't be.
Actually, it's not at all. The key is
30 seconds, we're out of time.
The key is this: when you politically correct, you can't even make any judgments or profiles whatsoever. That's irrational. We pretty much know what a terrorist, a jihadist is going to be, what it's going to look like, how they're going to act, and we can make some very smart decisions. The Israelis do a good job without profiling in this in a racial sense, but looking at the behavior of people.
Okay, we are out of time, so
we're going to have to pick this up because
Okay.
I'm interested in your sense of someone who comes here who's been here for 7 years.
But anyway, a life lost by a terrorist attack is no more valuable than a life lost in a mass shooting, I think.
Absolutely.
So, Sean and Mo, as well as Peter, thank you also for being with us. It was a good discussion.